looking like a sailor who hasn't a ship. Same salty song and curled up lips in the land of the brave and running out of veins, waiting for a guy silver-eyed like a bullet train. Kinda wishes that he would show up, 'cause it's all become a stain of the terracotta mud. Way down in the valley of the mud, it opens and closes before you can get back up. Lay down, basin valley in the mud, it opens and closes before you can get back up.
Hey everyone, my name is Jess Boggs. I am a senior at Longwood University, graduating in May of 2021, and this is my senior documentary. Way Down in the Valley of the Mud is about my grandfather's time serving in the US military in the 1960s, but more specifically about his time he spent in Vietnam. So he served in Vietnam in the mid-1960s, and just to preface, I did not know his entire story before sitting down and filming with him. So I'm very honored and very proud to have been able to digitally mark down his story for generations of our family to be able to watch and remember and honor him. Also, one more preface before we go into this, I do mention him as Ampy and my grandmother as Nona. Ampy because when I was little I couldn't say grandpa, and Nona is Italian for grandmother, which you will find out why I call her Nona later. So thank you guys so much for sitting down and watching, and I hope you enjoy.
Well, I'm Jim Weber. I was born in 6 November 1941, a month and a day before Pearl Harbor. And I guess I've grown up in one war or another all my life. And well, I graduated high school, Midwood High School in Brooklyn, New York, in June of 1959. In 59, they were having a recession, and jobs were very scarce, especially for high school graduate. I went ahead and joined the Army, went through basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey in the summer of 59, and that fall went through aviation school at Fort Rucker, Alabama. I was actually still 17. My 18th birthday wasn't until November of 59. After aviation school, come home for Christmas, and in January was shipped out to Fort Lawton in Seattle, Washington. And I was only there for 2 months when I came down on orders to go to Italy. Spent 4 years in Italy in the 110th Aviation Company. We started out in Vicenza, Italy, and then 2 months after I got to the company, we moved to Verona, where I met my wife, Luigina Weber.
My name is Luigina Weber. I born in Italy in 1937.
How did you meet Ampy?
To friend's house. Then from there, he came, he wanted to watch a movie, and then that's it. Then we got married, and I got my first baby, Elizabeth, and then you came after he came back from Vietnam. I really fall in love the first time, you know, that's all.
Well, our first date, believe it or not, was at the Cinema Bra, and the movie was themed from A Summer Place. And if you know the movie, you could almost say that was like us. I couldn't speak Italian, she couldn't speak English, but we kind of fell in love, and I bought a 25-cent Berlitz dictionary for myself, English to Italian, and one for her, Italian to English. And everything took off from there, and we were married. While I was in Italy, a few historical events took place. One, of course, was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we were put on full alert because we were waiting to see if Russia was going to start charging down through the Fulda Gap. But the most significant one, I think, was occurred in the mountains of northern Italy. It was the spring of 1963 or 64. It seemed that the side of a mountain slid into the lake that was above the dam. In fact, the residents always called it the Devil Dam because they were always afraid of it and thought something would happen one day. And from there, on the helicopter, we went up to these towns along Longarone. And when the dam burst, the water fell down about 1,000 feet onto the towns, and it had that wash basin effect. The water went out and come back in again, and it just wiped the towns out. And it buried everything. So the Italian military was sent up there, the Italian army, and they were digging out the corpses of people. And we were flying the helicopters in, and in fact, you have to forgive me if I'm kind of matter of fact about this, because it's kind of a defense mechanism with me, because it's when I find things are hard to talk about, I just be matter of fact. But so they were taking the bodies, the corpses, and throw them on the helicopter. And we were just actually sitting on top of the corpses because they were piled thick. Some of them had arms missing, heads missing. And we were flying them back down to Belluno, where they had ambulances, and unloading them, and they were taking them to a morgue. I think that made world news also. And like I say, it was a long time ago, but I think that's one of the most historical things that happened while I was in Italy. Getting back to skipping forward to when I was going to Vietnam, so come back to the States in March of '64, and so we ended up at Fort Benning, and while I was there, I put in for flight school. I'd always wanted to be a pilot. And I passed the physical, and I passed the exams and everything, and I was all set to go. I even had orders. And then I found out that they were going to make me a helicopter pilot because they needed helicopter pilots in Vietnam, and I don't like helicopters. So I bowed out of that, and they said, well, if you don't go to flight school, you're going to Vietnam. I said, well, send me. And so they did. From there, I got on a plane and flew out to San Francisco and to California, and joined the 54th Aviation Company in Fort Ord. I was only there for 3 days with the company before we all shipped out. Got our shots and everything, and we drove down to Long Beach, where we got on a ship, the USS Patch, and we spent the next 3 weeks on the Pacific Ocean, nonstop from the Pacific into the South China Sea, into Vietnam. When we got to Vietnam, we left the first cav off up in Da Nang, and then we left some engineers off in Cam Ranh Bay along the coast, and we were the last stop at Vung Tau. I think one of the most unnerving experiences I had at Vung Tau was we hit the beach with landing craft, and we had to go over the side of the ship on ladders. And of course, the landing craft were bobbing up and down about 10 feet in the waves and everything, and you had to time it just right for that landing craft to come up to you, get on it, because it was going to go down again. But we came ashore, and we got our company basically set up. We were sleeping in tents. We were set up right next to a morgue, and I remember every day. Air Force aircraft would come in and fly bodies in, and there were so many. They were all covered up, of course, in rubber bags and on litters, but they were laying in the middle of the street in the hot sun because they couldn't process them fast enough to send them back to the States, and that wasn't a very good memory. One memory in particular, in February of 1966, I was sent back down to the main company from Vung Tau to help out with a maintenance crew down there. And we were all still sleeping in tents in Vung Tau. And one night, we decided we were going to have a dinner. And word had gotten around that my wife was from Italy, and my buddy Roger Majors, who slept next to me in the tent. And you got to remember, these were 15-man, 20-man GP large tents, canvas tents. And we had fluorescent lights in them and a fan, luckily, because it was terribly hot and humid over there. But we decided to have a spaghetti dinner one night, and we got out our little camp stoves and this, that, and the other thing, and we had some pasta that one of the guys had bought when he was on up in Saigon, when he went to the PX up there, and we got some meat from the chopped meat from the mess hall, and some tomatoes and onions, and we made a sauce, and we had a spaghetti dinner basically, and that was a lot of fun. That was okay. I remember one of the last things that really occurred, because I rotated back in September of '66 to the States, but one of the last things that occurred was kind of significant was I think it was on the night of 12th or 13th of March. It was a Saturday night. We'd had a party that day, and everybody had gotten tired and everything, and we all had a few beers. And I was laying in my bunk, and it was about 8 o'clock at night, and I was asleep, and I heard a whoof, and I kind of woke up, and then another one was close, a whoom, and then a real loud whoom, and it was the Viet Cong. They were mortaring us from a sampan in the harbor. Just before the Saigon River goes up towards Saigon. And what they were trying to do is put some mortars down one runway, a line of caribous we had, and then come across and get a line of armed OV-1 Mohawks. But the sampans, of course, are just going back and forth in the waves, and these mortar rounds are going every place, mainly all over our tents. I remember there's a kid in the tent next to me. He had just gotten off the plane from Saigon, just gotten in the country, was unpacking his stuff, and that loud mortar round was in the tent. It got him. It put shrapnel through his lungs. And so I woke up and I ran, and I got the keys to the arms room. In fact, I had to fight a sergeant for him because he didn't want to open anything unless he was under orders. He couldn't understand that we were under attack. And I handed out the weapons to everybody and got everybody in their bunkers like they should be, and we surrounded the perimeter of our tents for defense. And we got this guy Callahan, who got the shrapnel in his lungs. I had him put on a Jeep that was taken to main post to the dispensary there. And then mortars are falling all around. I don't know what got into me, but I guess you just don't think about things. And so I secured the company and everything, and we made it through the mortar attack without any problems. Finally, we got an OV-1 off, Mohawk, and they were armed with missiles, air-to-air missiles, Stingers. But we were using the air-to-ground, too. And they sunk the sampan. And I guess that's about the most, I didn't realize it afterwards. You know, we were in the tents and everything, and somebody says, "Hey, Weber, you're bleeding." I said, "What?" And my leg was bleeding, and I didn't realize the time my pants was ripped. I'd gotten a piece of shrapnel, and you don't even feel it. I didn't even realize I had been hit with anything. But anyway, that's about the most significant thing that happened. I got myself an Army Commendation ribbon with a V device for valor. I can't really say I did anything. Anybody would have done it, but I guess that's just the way it goes. They wanted to give it to me, so I took it. Once you get into combat, it's odd. You know, you're not afraid. Either you're not afraid or you're so afraid you don't realize you're afraid. But you just live from, you don't think about it. You live from hour to hour, day to day. You just concentrate on what you're doing, and you don't think about yesterday or tomorrow. You're just there, and it's kind of weird. You become a different person. You just have to put it out of your mind, and you just block it out, and. That's how it is, you know. And when you're flying missions, you know, I was flying missions over areas where they were bombing, and the Viet Cong was shooting back, and one airfield in particular was a little special forces airfield out in the middle of the jungles, and it had a 1,000-foot runway supposedly, but 200 feet on one end of the runway was full of concertina wire. And we had to always fly in there, and we would resupply the Special Forces with food and rations and ammo. And we'd have to fly in around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's when Charlie would usually be napping. But we'd still pick up rounds and being shot at. And we were shot at all the time, and we just patched the aircraft with duct tape, basically, OD colored duct tape. We call it 100-mile-an-hour tape because it would hold on over 100 mile an hour.
My name is Diana Maria Weber. I am the daughter of James Douglas Weber and Louis Gina M. Weber. I was born in September 1967 in Verona, Italy, on military base Vicenza. But I do remember a lot of the aftermath of growing up with a father that served in Vietnam, which involved, I guess, a lot of flashbacks as far as being in the middle of the war. There were several stories. I recall was when I was a senior in high school, or actually it was before my senior year in high school. Nona and Ampy had gone to a cabin with some friends of theirs who was also a friend of his from Fort Eustis. They worked together out there, and they both served in Vietnam around the same time period. And they had been drinking a lot that weekend, and they were coming back from being out on the lake. They were driving back. Nona and Ampy were in their truck, and he just slammed his brakes on and, he was grabbing Nona, saying, "Get down, they're all around us." And he got out of the truck, and she didn't know what was going on, and she was like hollering, "Jim, what's wrong? Who's around us?" And he grabbed her, and they threw her down in a ditch, and it took a little while, and then one of their friends that was there, Sam and Andy, came out and I guess got Ampy back to reality. Like I said, they've all been through that, so it's almost like they know how to bring themselves and their friends and buddies back to normal. I think that the difference between the PTSD and the battle fatigue that Ampy was referring to has a lot to do with their era, their time. PTSD is something a little bit more current in our generation, diagnosis with dealing with military, but PTSD has a lot to do with just trauma-related incidences, to where back in that time period, they didn't have a lot of that. They didn't recognize a lot of that.
So before we end off this documentary, I wanted to clarify one thing for you. So that would be the difference between battle fatigue and PTSD. So that term was used interchangeably throughout the documentary, especially at the end when my mother was speaking about PTSD. And I just wanted to clarify that in the 1960s, the soldiers that returned from Vietnam who were experiencing symptoms of PTSD did not know what PTSD was. PTSD was not even discovered until far after Vietnam. So these soldiers had no idea what they were experiencing, so they just labeled it battle fatigue. So essentially they are the same thing. Battle fatigue and PTSD are the same thing. However, the term PTSD was not identified until later as a mental health disorder. So if you or someone you know may be suffering with symptoms of PTSD, whether that be from the military or any other traumatic experience, I will leave some resources at the end for you to utilize. It is a very serious disorder, and no one should have to go through it alone. Thank you for watching.